Right, we might start if that's all right with everybody. Okay.
Acknowledgement, yes.
Please.
Mid-Murray Council would like to acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional custodians of the land, the Ngadjuri, Naywong, Mangaraku, Narkat, Nurrunjeri and Parramac peoples of the Mid-Murray lands and waters. It is upon their ancestral lands and waters that the Mid-Murray Council meets and operates, and Council pays respect to elders past and present, and their spiritual beliefs that are of continuing importance to those First Nations peoples of today. Council further acknowledges the contributions and important role that First Nations peoples continue to play within the community, and we extend that respect to any peoples in attendance here today.
Thank you. So we'll report the apology from Andy. Confirmation of minutes the 10th of February. Are we happy with that? Sure, great. Clive, you want to talk about the governance issue that's been raised?
Yeah, just through the chair. There was some comments in regard to the minutes, and that there previously we've had some personal comments in there, and by the way the minutes are structured, just because it may have stated that a person had an opinion, and then we may go into like the next paragraph of more decision, that it may be assumed that that's the continuation of someone's comments as well. So in the future, in line with probably a lot of the other councils, we'll de-identify any of the comments unless anyone really specifically would like it stated in the minutes that I have got this opinion or a certain statement, and that would hopefully stop the confusion previously. And that's and as far as talking about comments or discussions that are actually in the minutes, when you look at the minutes, the guidelines as far as preparing the minutes, it doesn't, and that normally it states what should be included in the minutes, and it actually doesn't say that discussions can be, but they don't have to be. So I had some discussions with the governance officer and said, if we would like to continue to have discussions in our minutes, would we actually need an information returns of reference? And I was advised, no, that's not required. So I suppose if we go forward on those principles, that we identify any comments, unless someone of the committee wishes to make a statement and have it reported that there is their statements, and maybe we'll put that in quotations and make it clear what those comments are.
I mean, a lot of places don't have any commentary in the minutes, they just have the resolutions. But then now we have this presiding members report, presumably. Do those comments go in the presiding members report to council? Is that the way it works now?
Yes, so council, after each audit risk committee meeting, as part of the report is the minutes, and also basically a copy of the agenda items, like what business was discussed during there. So so I suppose you could do something like record the discussion, but not record it in the minutes, but record it in the report that goes to it. That's one of the nth degree options that you probably could take, I suppose. But
that would be my preference, is that it goes in the report that goes to council, and the minutes just stay with what motions were moved, unless somebody wants to add a comment and then we move a motion to include that comment.
I tend to agree.
Yes.
That's a good way to do it.
So it's churning through the minutes to decide that way. I would say that as the minute taker will still record them within there, but then
pull them out, put them in the report that council gets.
So you could continue with keeping them in for the report that goes to council as an option as well, but then the minutes just be the motions. There's a couple.
David, I think that would be my recommendation, is that follows our meeting procedures. So the minutes are only motions and things that are formally passed, and then any of the commentary which you do and David reviews and you review goes into the report to council. so that there's that commentary still there for the members' benefit.
So Ben, you could have a copy of the minutes as we take them now, that goes to council, and a version of that just with the motions become the minutes.
As long as there's not confusion about which one's the actual minutes, that's fine. Yeah, because you want obviously the commentary to be per agenda item. So I'd be happy with that, Clive. You know, and maybe it's just précis of minutes or something like that on that document, and then the actual minutes is what is tabled and confirmed.
Yeah, so possibly we would have. Yeah, I'm not sure technically whether the minutes need to go to the council for approval. I'll have a look at that.
They only ever be received by
Been
council.
received.
Minutes, they're not confirmed until this
not a
meeting,
required.
3 months down the track.
So whether the report that goes to council needs to have two versions, let's say, of the minutes as they're taken during the meeting, and then the official minutes, which are just the motion. I'll check that out.
I think just in the council report is here are the draft minutes. The comments will be taken out when they get ratified by the audit committee next meeting.
So that holds together. Yeah. Okay. That's
Good, I'm sure the minutes will reflect that.
I'll take that as a procedural
The irony.
to take.
Probably not the most important thing we've got to sort out.
No.
Anybody got any declarations of interest? Because I've got one. During the first 4 months of this year, I was invited to facilitate a strategic planning session for IWS, who own the transfer station at Winfield and the dump at Dublin. It's recently been sold to an infrastructure firm in Sydney, and I've also bought something in Perth and Newcastle. I don't think there is a conflict, but I do mention it because there is discussion, and we do have our own landfill here. They do about 300,000 tonnes a year in Adelaide alone, compared to our 5,000 tonnes, possibly going to 10. And from what I read in the reports here, there's no thought of pinching any of their clients or pinching any of your clients. So
Yeah, just through the chair, I suppose
I rang and spoke to Clive and John about it this morning, just to make sure it didn't come as
the Canberra landfill cell 2 is just informative, and it's just a report to be received. If anyone wants to discuss in detail in the reports and the validity of figures or anything, then at that particular time it might be prudent for the chair to leave a room so clear discussion is clear and open discussion.
Yeah, if there's any issue on
that's right.
Step out of that session. One of the things I have learned is a hell of a lot about landfills throughout the whole of Australia that I have access to a very significant report, which I'll ask whether I can copy. It's huge and it's incredibly informative. One of the things I have learned though is that there's a lot of things you can do with landfills to reduce the levy, therefore make it more profitable, and also just other things that can be done, which with the consent of IWS, I can tell you about it in a bit more detail. It would make it even more profitable. Okay, if there's no other declarations of interest, got no deputations, we can jump into the reports. 7.1, John.
Okay, thank you, David. Through the chair, the highlights of the March budget reviews: reduced borrowings for the financial year, increase in operating income and reduction in operating expenses, win-win, several new grants, both capital and operating, and most all of these will go into next financial year with corresponding increases in expenditure in both years. We're not proceeding with a SABFAC grant for Manning Waters as the required council contribution was too large. That's offset by a reduction in expenditure as well. There's significant interest savings, 87,000 in Q3, go with 100,000 in Q2 and 130,000 in Q1. So it's 317,000 this year. Still got over $2 million cash in the bank and only a $5 million fixed CAD. There's been movement of some CapEx between budget lines. carry forward of plant and machinery renewals of $2 million due to tender and supply issues. There's an increase in the Cambrai landfill costs with related future savings. So that's the budget review in a snapshot.
Thank you, John. Questions?
Through the chair, just clarify that funding statement around Manor Waters. So that was funded by the developer, and the developer was unable to fund the contribution, not council. So just clarify that council wasn't contributing any funding.
Any other questions?
I just wonder, the operating surplus deficit ratio chart on page 13, I spoke to Clive because the adjusted result says in the little legend says adjusted FAGs paid in advance, and I question that because it wasn't paid in advance, but Clive said it was flood funding. So if we just change that wording down the bottom, FAGs or other grants or something.
So the adjustment to the operating result was related to, I think, $3.785 million. So because it was abnormal income, not natural expenditure in the same year, so to normalise the result, we've reduced the operating income on that amount, and also the ratio. Yeah, that's been quite rightly. The graph should read that. It should read something like timing of grants or unmatched income expenditure.
Yeah, not specific FAGs.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Just a clarification on, so the grant income, John, we talk about grant income and grant expenditure being carried forward. So I assume that means that we haven't received the grant income yet, or because you will have to receive the grant income if you've actually received the money.
Some of it we've received.
Yeah.
Some of it we're still expecting to receive before the 30th of June. And whether we can spend the budgeted amounts before the 30th of June is...
So there might be expenditure carried forward, but you'll be recording the income as it comes in.
No, the income will be carried forward as well.
Can you
So
do
we'll
that?
Through tied grants. Yeah, so if the grant is tied to specific expenditure. So if for the expansion of cell 2 at the landfill, and because there's a tie there. So if we stop the project, they'll stop us giving us any grant money. So the income expenditure will be matched.
Will be matched. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Any other questions? There being none, I make the recommendation as set out on the bottom of page 4. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favour? Thank you. 7.2. Long-term financial plan.
Okay. The draft long-term financial plan for 25-26 to 34-35 has been prepared on the basis of being in a small surplus in 2 years' time, being 2026-27. Net financial liability ratio is projected to peak at 30% in 2026-27, with borrowings of about $9.3 million, and then reduced down to more or less an immaterial amount in year 10 for about $47,000. This is the first time the long-term financial plan has been prepared to include full cost attribution. An extensive exercise has been performed, and that comes as a separate item later in the agenda. The main impact of that is in relation to service charges, where council seeks to recover the total expenditure, and in particular, the biggest impact has been to the community wastewater management schemes, with a full cost attribution amount of approximately $356,000 being attributed to that activity. And at the same time, I seek to start to recover the annual depreciation amount for CWS being $673,000 in the new financial year. And in the other areas, with the curb and waste side, the collection of refuge and recycle services, there's been an increase of about 9%, but in reality, the biggest increase is looking at a 49% for CMWS. I've actually quickly did a calculation of CMWS upgrades in the long-term financial plan and renewals for the next 10 years, and they total approximately $6.3 million. And that kind of melds in approximately with the annual depreciation of $673,000 per year. So the principle of recovering whole of life is in the same principle as is with disclosure principles, and each year we ask how close we are to those principles of recovery, and we give them an update. So previously they've been told that we're looking at targeting a 5-year cash surplus, small cash surplus, and then after those 5 years, we'd look at the whole life recovery. I suppose what's impacted us in the last 2 years is the flood impact, and there's been a number of expenditure items which have been abnormal, I suppose, to definitely abnormal to the CMWS schemes. A number of credits have started to flow through there, especially for insurance, but we're still waiting for a considerable amount of money to come from the state disaster. So that's probably the biggest impact. And when you think about it, what's happened is, as we've never ever recovered the depreciation from the CMWS, holistically, when we tried to do our budget, we've tried to be in a surplus, but that particular activity, we've never recovered the depreciation. So in a funny way, we're overcompensating in the general operations to try and pick up that $673,000 in depreciation. So by phasing this in, not only depreciation, but the full cost attribution, that will ensure that the schemes are sustainable in the future. Any questions? Oh, sorry. And in conjunction with that, I've actually given everyone a table out front of their seat, and I don't expect you to look at it and understand it straight away, but basically the first 3 columns are statistical information of number of connections, the maintenance fee for current year, the maintenance fee for the proposed for next year, and the 2 columns which have got the blue headings are the ones that we've targeted previously to recover, and now the other 2 in yellow, being the depreciation and the overhead support services full cost attribution, is what's been calculated to have a new target. And then if you look on the far right corner, far right column, there's a projection of what each connection costs would need to be for each scheme to break even. Now, I'm yet to have a second review of my full cost attribution, and there's a couple other things that need to be brought into calculations, being that probably CMWS in a couple of areas may be weighted too heavy. I don't think it'll make a difference. I don't think it'll make a material difference. The other part would be that as we're seeking full cost recovery, there's certain schemes such as Ornamont, which services 2 public toilets. So basically there'd be four stalls there. We need to come to some type of a decision what each one of those is equivalent to a connection. And my first one thought would be, if you have a toilet stall, it'd have to be worth at least 1 connection. So then, in that fact, we'll, like public toilets, will have to have a fair share of the full cost attribution and depreciation, and if there's any call on if there's not enough funds as far as capital works, the council would actually have to put their fair share in. just like the council did with Manor Ward's evaporation, we said we've got X amount of area of reserves there, we need to pay our fair share as well. So making it fair all around. So there are some capital actions, and I'll hope to do those in the next couple of weeks, just to and that's why I've done a step approach and not tried to jump across straight to and say let's get full recovery straight away. A bit of a gentle approach. Yeah. So the other comments that I've got as far as the long-term financial plan is along with council's current positions on restricting expenditure on new assets. Only new assets for stormwater been allocated in relation to the Howard Bagshore subdivision agreement, which was that piece of land over there. We've signed an agreement. We've been obliged to do certain things as far as stormwater there. And also the council has endorsed recently an application for the special local roads program application, which has a total capital expenditure of about $1.8 million and grants of about 66%, about 1.5, and that's for the sealing of Murraylands and the O'Dara Road. Hopefully I've said it correctly. So when I placed together all the capital renewal expenditure in the asset management plan, excluding, there's been some suggestions in asset management plans to do some new and upgraded, like footpaths, etc., because we haven't been sustainable to date. I've just basically excluded those. Land and buildings, or money in the buildings, I've delayed by 1 year, approximately $900,000 until 2027-28 when we actually for that. Other than that, as per the asset management plans, all the renewal that has been scheduled in there, I've scheduled it as per the asset management plans, and that includes the plan which are in this agenda for adoption as well. And so we're pretty close to having all our asset management plans ticked off. There's a couple minor ones which I like to do, which have to do with both water and TV services.
Good questions.
Just general comment, thank you very much to the staff team who've gone and done all of that work. The full cost attribution was a little bugbear of mine that people weren't paying their fair share, so I really appreciate that that's done, and I'm sure SCOSA will too. And also with the asset management plans, getting them all within the plan. And I really like the idea of holding the buildings back a year anyway, because we are doing that full review of the buildings, and if we can offload some, then that will sort of help with those costs. So thank you, big team. It's looking wonderful, really feeling relieved.
I had some queries about the CWMSs, but I again had a phone call with John and Clive this morning, and I think I understand it better now. My concern was, for example, at Walker Flat, it looks like our contribution for 26 will double, yet we have a significant amount of money in the bank account, and yet there were 4 or 5 that actually were in deficit, but their increases were relatively nominal. So, and that's why that came about. Yes. Thank you, Clive and John, for that. Right, any further?
I'd just like to echo the Mayor's comments. I think that's been some good work done there, and I think it's been a good move to fully cost these services, which otherwise are being subsidised by the rest of the community in some ways. I was just wondering if you can just, I see there's a 47% increase in the fees next year. The costs have gone up 47% next year as part of a phase in. How much is left to go into?
So what I did was I looked at the difference, and to phase it over 5 years, I've actually put 20% of the difference of the total shortfall in there, and then next year will be 25% of what's left, and then it'll be 33 and 50% going down. So if you look at the table that I've given you on the far right hand side, based on the current budget for the new financial year, that's what the connections would need to be. So what I'll do is I'll do some additional work as well, as far as what SA Water would charge, because they actually charge on capital value as well. And then just have a look at the group of those. Obviously, the council we haven't got the economies of scale to run a CNWO scheme like SA Water. And I deliberately on this table, I deliberately put some of the number of connections there. So we've kind of got like 6 and 11 in one. So, you know, unfortunately, some of the fixed costs, such as the solid waste levy, testing of water, some of and continual maintenance just to check those, they're just standard costs. It doesn't, they go to the wastewater treatment plant. It doesn't matter whether it's branched down and they've got 160, is it? 238, or you're looking at the one that's got 6, you've still got to go there, test the water, make sure the chlorinator's working, and you've still got to pay the solid waste levy, and it doesn't matter, it's per site, it doesn't work on number of connections or flows. So, obviously some of those are going to should be high, but that's the takeaway from being isolated and getting services to those isolated areas as well.
Have you compared these with somewhere like Mount Barker, for instance, or Alexandria University? Because
Well, I haven't.
they try and use the full cost.
It'd be good to see there,
Versus,
like even on a percentage breakdown,
Yeah,
just to have a look at those to see.
there must be a scale, of course, so that become a scale.
True, but it'd be interesting to see like their total budget and what they distribute to FCA to what their driver is.
Yeah.
So later in the agenda, I've gone through and I've done quite extensive work on the drivers.
Yeah.
And to be really quite pedantic, because I know it's going to come under the microscope.
Yeah.
And
I know Matt Parker are actually going to create a internal subsidiary, formal subsidiary under the Act, which I thought about. For instance, they're going to the extent of separating it all out.
I think they do an exercise at the moment with their annual financial statements, don't they?
Yeah.
Show that as a separate.
They do, but they haven't actually formed a
So,
subsidiary under the Act.
so they split the operations and they say,
Yeah, they've done all the work.
council accepts CNWS and it's just CNWS by itself, basically as if it was a standalone entity, and they're going to formalise that, obviously.
Yeah. The other question I had was in relation to sort of return on capital side of things, which is part of the sort of framework that SCOSA promotes, and that's not talked about in here.
So SCOSA also allows return on capital and also
risk.
and a risk factor as well. Yeah. I'm a bit skeptical about the risk, because in the end you say that those group of people have to take that burden. I'm not sure where there'd be a situation where there was a flood or a fire or some other disaster, and then say, well, don't worry about it. We've calculated the risk and the general ratepayer will cover the repairs.
But what about the cost of capital? I think that's
So historically, all the schemes were financed, and this is another bit of a twist to the circumstance of Mid-Murray Council. So what happened was the various schemes, except 3 to my knowledge, were built and certified to SA Health requirements, and then they were handed over just as a developer would, free of charge to council. And that's probably been a discussion point in whether depreciation should have been included or not. But I suppose I look at most of the schemes are entering probably midlife now. They're probably 20 years old.
well, who's going to pay for the renewal?
That's right. And if you're the original owner, you can say, well, I paid for it. Why should I be paying double now for depreciation? But then if I went and bought a shack in one of these areas and on year 49 or 50, and they've said, oh, knocked on the door, I get a letter and say, oh, Clive, you need to contribute $25,000 for renewal CMWS. I'd say, well, hold on, isn't there annuity, or haven't you been collecting depreciation and there's a fund for this? So to me, I suppose, after thinking about it, they gave away free of charge the asset. If they wanted to keep it, they should have kept it. They've given away free of charge. So, so basically now they're just a user, the owner of the assets per council. And as each owner, each year's the service ability of that asset in the future erodes away, they should be paying back into a fund, or we should be funding that for either short-term assets for the renewal and also the long-term assets as well. Okay. It may become a time where the funds get to a point, and I don't think it would be, definitely not in the first 10 years on an average, when I've looked at the renewals versus the depreciation to be collected, they basically on an average themselves out.
Just trying to understand the accounting entry. So when, for example, Bow Hill private development completed purchases of the land, effectively paid the developer given council to swim.
Yeah.
Does council understand, or does council get the cost price of that and put that in the balance sheet?
Yes.
And that being depreciated?
Yeah, so that would have been the first valuation of the asset, and the other side of that would have gone to the equity of the business.
Because effectively the contributions that each resident now pays to council is supposed to match depreciation, isn't it?
Yeah, it should buy its principal.
Yeah. Right, thank you.
But it hasn't been, because the committee said they didn't want that to happen.
I understand that, but again, we've got a situation where there are some schemes where there's over $100,000 in the account, and there is others that are in deficit. I'm not sure the deficit is necessarily being collected quick enough to match what might be the replacement needs.
So yeah, that could be a factor in setting that. I suppose accelerating some of those.
Yeah, all right. Any further discussion?
Yeah. Look, this is probably a new kid on the block question. I'm sure you consider this at some length, but the idea of setting future years rates at CPI minus 0.5%.
Is that really reality?
Well, exactly. I mean, and once it gets set in the mind of the ratepayers, is it going to be difficult to reverse that decision, because we don't seem to take account of the increased costs of growth. I mean, we're effectively giving growth back to the existing ratepayers, and there's quite a cost comes with growth in terms of increased operating costs. There are some other risk factors within costs as well, I think, because you're using CPI rather than LGPI. Interest rates you've set at 4%, which may or may not eventuate over the future years. EB increases, I think, are set at a reasonably low level of 2.5 minus 0.25 or wherever it is. I just think there's a risk there in terms of the ongoing surpluses that we're showing, that we may not be taking account of our cost problem.
Probably realistically, the level of service that councils have given probably over the last 6-7 years have probably decreased. We've become more regimental in finding our service levels, and there's quite a lot of work which is just on the cusp of being completed, where council will, on a very low detail, say what they do and what they don't do. That will help contain costs.
Yeah.
I suppose what we've done previously is probably growth has been underestimated. So probably we've estimated at 0.5% and several years that's gone 3/4 and over 1% as well. So there's probably a little bit the opposite in that area, and it's to council to decide what they want. So like, the projections are there. We've probably made, we've gone very lean in a couple of positions as well, and there's a review on a lot of the departments and the resources, because probably some of the areas probably under resource, and council seen a report already for infrastructure. And there's a couple of new positions coming in flow as well. So, there's probably going to be some more expenses, but we've probably undershot some of the growth revenue as well.
Yeah, that was what my question was going to be about, whether you've calculated enough cost of the growth. It's
Probably conservative, yeah.
Yeah, but the growth is conservatively sort of same as really.
Yeah, so it's going forward. There's only 0.5%, and we've never ever other than like the services, there's like user pay services. We've actually calculated that in because we're going to have extra things, etc. But with as far as like parks and gardens and our library contributions, we don't say, plus we need to give CPI plus at least 0.5% to everyone. We don't do that, I suppose. And over a long period of time, that's probably led to people looking at their budgets a bit more carefully and saying, I need to be more careful with my money because I haven't got as much as I used to. So they're being more wise in where they spend and how they spend it, and trying to get a bit more kick bucks. I think it's been a good exercise. I think everyone's very budget conscious now.
I think council need to keep an eye on that 0.5%, though, that 0.5% reduction in rates below CPI. I think it's going to cause a few problems in the future if you keep that.
Oh, right, yeah, council.
I wouldn't expect. I haven't seen a long-term financial plan that actually predicts things correctly.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
So the next 3
it's the
years,
best year.
And we are.
Politically, it gets into people's minds, doesn't it, that we're going to get the benefits in the future.
Yeah, I don't know how.
Oh, we like that.
But I don't know
Yeah,
how many
council.
people will actually read it.
Yeah.
Oh,
True.
there's one ratepayer that would.
Yeah, well,
I would probably more see it as there's scope for council to push money to where they think economic development will help drive economic development.
yeah.
We've got a few issues with our roads. There may be some, matching of grant money at least to get some of those, some of our adjoining mining sites and things like that.
Yeah.
So, and look, we've held back on things such as footpaths, we've actually just held back. We only put new footpaths in where we get 100% grant funding, and they've been through economic stimulus projects.
Yeah.
So,
There's other advocacy we're working on too, like trying to get being able to rate on energy infrastructure. So if that comes in there, that could change that totally. Extra government funding, all that kind of stuff. So I think it will change.
The issue is the cumulative effect of not keeping up with inflation.
Yeah.
If you lose it in 1 year, you don't just lose it for that year, you lose it for all the years.
Yeah.
And
And we have
suddenly
paid for that.
you've
over
lost
the last 5
CPI
years.
completely.
Yeah. I would know that.
You have been CPI plus 2%
That's right.
Mm.
for some
For many
time,
years,
so
yeah. Or more.
yeah, or more.
Yeah, that's catch up, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
The previous one, yeah.
The other question I have up there is, how is sort of very well considering it here, but in times in the past where the council itself have altered a scenario like this, and I guess the question is, politics going to be able to support this?
Good
type of
question.
thing?
We did have a briefing on it and it was very well received.
Good.
One elected member who usually is very concerned about this was really happy to see that it was only a 4.94% rise. So I think it should be accepted by council. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yes, so council's seen projections of how the major rate groups will affect those.
Yeah.
One was in particular councillor looked at very closely was pond production due to the impact at the moment. So, and because of their capital values being a lot lower, on average, they had looking at a 1% increase.
And again, the rate of the dollar have gone down. So if your valuation hasn't moved, your rates have gone down.
Yeah.
Even with the 4%. So I think that's what we should be good.
So yeah,
We might just worry about the CWS fee.
well,
Yes, that is a concern.
well, the flip side, talking about the pond reduction is probably the shack areas. The shack areas have, they've just under 10%, I think, on average. And then if you look with the CWS increase as well, so they're the ones that are going to feel the burden in this budget.
But the thing with that is they've been subsidised by the general rate payer by about $300,000 per year for how many years? So, they have been getting a really good hand out and that
So-
is.
Yeah, so we definitely need to do a bit more work on, awareness of what's happened previously. Also, recommendations of SCOSA, doing some calculations, maybe by shack location, what the rates would be if SA Water would be on average, etc. And then maybe do an average of what they've been paying for the last 3 to 4 years. Yeah.
Through the chair, that was going to be my comment on the messaging on the swims specifically and making sure that we've got that right. Because that is going to, cause some issues for those areas that have just been mentioned. So we need to do some work on that.
Good. Any other discussion or comments?
Just a very quick one on it's a bit of the document, which I assume is a public document that's going to go out on page 39. We make a statement that the use of good debt as a means of funding timely asset renewal and rehabilitation. I'm not sure that's right. Aren't we trying to get into a position where we're funding asset renewals through rates revenue? The use of good debt is,
I suppose that the statement was meant to be that don't be frightened if the council's got some debt.
Yeah.
And at the present ratio, we're like for the next 2 years, it's around about 29-30%, where the top ceiling is about 100%.
Yeah.
Like if we had the growth of Mount Barker, probably 100% would be fine but we're not. We're kind of lucky to get between 0.5% and 1% growth. So, I would say at the very most, a council such as Mid-Murray should probably only be topping around 50% max, I think. Yeah. So, there's that intergeneration growth or intergenerational debt as well. If you're creating assets, well, the next generation should pay for it. So you're going to have part of that benefit, but it just cycles through anyway. So as one asset starts, ends its life and another one begins. They're all staggered. So
pity you can't keep the 1.85% cap moving forward.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I did calculate at one stage it was earning us for $300
Yeah.
a day. Yeah.
Yep.
So we can possible that.
I think it's good debts, bad debts, like Norway, 160%. Wow. And in 10 years, they're still at 90 or something.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well, that's the end of the discussion and questions. I know the recommendation that's contained in the centre of page 32. We'll have a seconder. Thank you, Peter. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favour? Thank you. 7.3.
Okay.
Plan and budget.
Yeah, thank you, David, through the chair. I'm predicting an operating surplus of 802,000 next year, adjusted to an operating deficit of 402,000 when grants utilised for capital purposes are removed from the operating income. So that'll be renewal of assets. CPI increase of 3.2% based on the RBA's February forecast for June 2026, depreciation of 7.796 million, capital expenditure of 11.644 million, with the asset renewal funding ratio 125% as we continue to catch up. Borrowings reduced to 8.9 million, with net liability ratio 29%. full cost attribution included in the budget for the first time for the corresponding increase in swims costs and waste management costs. The swims increases to be factored in over 5 years. And the proposed public consultation period of 21 days from 21 May to 10 June. That's it in a nutshell.
Yep, all right, any questions?
Was just going to add to the chair that, as per another report, all the assets have been indexed, all the ones that haven't been revalued this financial year. So that appreciation is probably can't be more exact or more accurate than it is. And land and buildings are due to be revalued, and that's going to occur in June. So once we have those, I'm not sure we'll be able to put it in the dot budget. It may come through as in the first quarter. In the APV doing evaluation, and they do a short and long life calculation on assets, which normally moderates the depreciation expense as well in comparison to others. So that's the other thing stuff.
Okay.
Sort of a query on the rate capping. You use 166. As opposed to, I think it's 153. There's another rate capping provision, that sort of specifically aims at residential properties only. Do you apply rate capping across the board to all ratepayer categories? And it's by application.
Yeah.
It's quite high, I know. So.
And there's certain conditions here that the property hasn't been sold, subdivided.
Have the extra
Capital improvements.
And you have to live there, don't you?
And it's got to be your place of residence.
Yeah. But you applied across the board to all
That fits this conditions.
industry and that sort of stuff. And do you, how much have you in the last year spent on capping?
Not as much as we budgeted for. I think every year I've been on.
If you make people apply for it.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, we reduce that budget every time, I think, John, haven't we, from every budget review, from what we projected. I think it was 300 grand maybe this year. And one year it was only $30,000.
I even get confused with our forms.
Yeah, through the chair, we did budget a lot higher this year.
Yeah.
Because of the changes in the valuations due to the flood. Some went down, some went up, and so we did budget a bit more for that. But we still are under budget. I can't find the number.
So I've got in front of us. So originally budget for capping of 51,000. We reduced that budget to 43.5, and it's sitting at 42,800 at the moment. Capping the previous year was 33,000.
Not much in 20 years.
Jump back.
Yeah, I think it was 10%. I reckon we budgeted 300,000 the year before because of the issue around the floods. And it was 10% of what we budgeted for.
Yeah.
My only comment in the annual business plan was one that we can't control is landscape levy increasing by 9.4%. I was just saying how really frustrating that we're working so hard to try and keep our ratepayers' rates low, and we've got the most expensive landscape levy in the state, and it's a state government charge, and we will pay different. But we will take that up with the board CEO and chairperson when they come to council next meeting.
And it's lucky that we, through the chair, that we collect that on behalf of the government too, Simone.
Yeah.
And rates.
Yes.
I'll just give you a trigger when I have lunch with him on Friday.
I can give you my letter.
Do that.
I've got one things on page 93. It says that and the comments that state that an estimated 1.1% will become from subdivision and additional development. That's it. In the comments thing at the top right-hand corner of that page. Whereas elsewhere you're talking about it adds up to the same but different.
That's last year's comment. I have to take that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's not.
Okay, yep, all right. It adds up to the same thing, but it's just different. So it should be 1.14, I think, for sustainability. And 1.74 is used elsewhere.
Oh, so yeah.
Yeah, so Tectals is using
Yeah.
additional 1.4,
Yeah, 1.1 should be.
Yeah, anyway, have a look at that.
Yeah.
And on page 94, which is this one, third of the way down where it talks about the minimum rate. Says 1,052, whereas elsewhere on page 96 was 1,007.
Yeah. So, I'll, in the 1,042 will actually be reduced as well, because what I've done is, that included the 0.5% growth, so.
Right. So it's
it should-
1,037 is
Yeah.
correct. Yeah, okay. So it's just that, table which confuses everybody.
Yeah.
And there's a date issue on page 94 as well.
Sorry, what page is that, Peter?
Page 94. Talking about, yeah, that yellow, sorry, 93, page 93, the yellow bit at the top has a heading 24, 25 as proposed. It should be 25, 26.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
It's about 400 pages, I read it.
And the title for the CNWS one, is this year, next year, had the same, the correct date as well, yeah.
All right, any other comments, Peter?
Just on the SCOSA report, they recommended that we put some information in the public document about efficiencies and what's the
Cost savings, yeah.
yeah, cost saving
Yep.
efficiencies. And I just wondered if we got enough in there with the public document that's it's going out for ratepayers. Just wondering whether you want to, because we did some good work on it. We've got some good work in the sustainability paper.
Yep.
I just wanted to show to the community that we are making some effort to discuss.
All right, any further discussion? There being none, I move the recommendation that's contained in the centre of 7. Is there a seconder? Thank you. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favour? Thank you. Right, draft river structures asset management plan, Glenn.
Yes, good afternoon, and through the chair. Presented the first asset management plan relating to river structures facilities. This is in follow-up to the endorsement of the watercraft asset management plan, which is now based on Council's website. Evaluation was completed in March, hence the follow-up to that, the asset management plan derived from the valuation and condition assessment. The asset management was heavily reviewed with service levels. So there's service classifications of each site. There's 29 sites of river facilities. So they were comprehensively reviewed and updated with a capital rolling works program of 15 years and Appendix A of the document. The total value current replacement cost of the river structures is about $8.8 million. So that incorporates boat ramps, the car parks, could be lighting, pontoons, bumpers, fencing, retaining wall, that's listed in the asset management plan, containing all those assets that were valued on page 194. And it gives an unit rate of each item, if it's square meters or cubes, or linear meters as well. Yeah, so a recommendation there that it be referred to council for approved and released for public consultation in accordance with the policy.
Thank you. Comments?
The depreciation we're talking about here, is that being put into the budget and stuff?
So just through the chair, so previously, I hadn't indexed assets, but I'd actually been indexing depreciation from the previous time they were actually valued.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit hard to even match how I was going every year, because I'm thinking, oh, well, it's only an estimate. So the indexation has actually pulled down depreciation slightly when I all flowed through. So the river and the river structures had very little impact on it. So overall, I think that the group shouldn't go off top of my head, but I think you'll find that depreciation and there's no material increase. It might be even just a slight increase under CPI.
So the fair value in the accounts is the 5.7 million, is that?
So,
yeah.
So the depreciation's been loaded, and I've actually run depreciation in the new financial year. So that's what I've set my budget on.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Okay,
Okay, any other
this time.
questions?
Just on the gifted assets, I guess. So the gifted assets don't come with any allowance for the DIT assets don't come with any allowance for maintenance or funding placement. We just take them as an asset, do we?
Through the chair, that would be the case. So there'd be the ongoing maintenance and the insurance, if it's required for insurance as well, that due, which is Department of Water, would not pay for. It's the upfront capital cost then gifted to council.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
gift that keeps giving.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's the issue, isn't it?
Yeah. When an asset is really a liability.
Yeah.
Keeps taking.
So are the LGA working with about their jetties? Maybe we could get on with our debt assets and our due assets.
And what are we doing with the removal of the Morgan Wharf? Have we got that in the long-term financial plan? The cost of
The heritage listed wharf.
Removal.
Sorry?
The heritage listed wharf.
Heritage listed, is it going to be pulled down and numbered and pulled back? That's something they've done, isn't it? They've done that.
Yes.
Through
Through the chair, so with the community and recreational grant, it was an amount of $2 million put in there for some restoration or remediation work, as far as and basically what's happened is between the wharf and the land, some of that's been eroded away, so now there's a gap. And from what we have known from previous floods, people just pushed more dirt back over. So obviously there's a whole lot of engineering work that needs to be done with that. And basically the state government said, well, let's put that to one side. And they've given us money for our open space and recreational areas, and said that that'll be considered separately. So
okay.
I'm not sure.
If there's
I
money.
think it implies in the plan that it's just going to be removed and anyway, no, perhaps that's not right.
Yeah. No, I'm not sure whether we could remove it.
No, okay, because it's heritage listed. Okay. Okay, so it's just paused and we're not doing anything. We haven't got anything in the plan now.
And in reality, that's how the wharf's been for probably the
Ongoing
last
piece
couple
of work
decades.
for us.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just been a bit of a big project which council has struggled with, I suppose.
We're trying to get it federally listed, so then there's more opening for other grants to try and get it restored.
Yeah.
But we've been knocked back twice.
Once it was the biggest inland port in Australia.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a good structure when there is a high river for people to tie up to.
Looks right, doesn't it? All right, if there are no further questions, I move the recommendation contained at the bottom of page, pardon me, 167. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favour? Thank you. Thank you, Glenn. Right, John, policies due for review.
Yes, we've just added one new policy to our accounting and risk policies register, and that's the subject of the next report. I'll just leave it as read.
Questions?
My only question was going to be, when are we going to do that one?
All right, on that basis, I'll move the recommendation in the centre of page 237. Seconder, thank you. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favour? Right. Thank you. 7.6.
Okay, thank you, David. This is a draft man and water separate rate policy, review of our existing policy with no changes, and we just need it recommended to council for endorsement.
Discussion? There being none, I move the recommendation. Bottom of page 240. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favour? Done. Thank you. Glenn, 7.7.
Yes, through the chair, this is the annual review of council's revaluation schedule that's presented annually. It just provides an update what's expected, particularly for next financial year, and that being plant machinery, which will be annually, transport and being sealed and unsealed roads, as well as Bowhill water and TV utilities. So there's only a couple next financial year compared to what we've been doing up to date for this current financial year and last financial year as well.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, Glenn, the roads and earthworks for next year is going to be done, as I see on the table, by council valuation using unit rates. Is there any independent
Yeah.
involved in providing?
Sure. Yeah. Through the chair, to answer Peter's question, yeah, that comments from when it was done in 2021. So I'd be certainly looking for independency. I think the unit rates were reviewed internally at the time. But yes, I think it needs an overview to look at the earthworks as well as the pavement structure as well, and being the surface being sealed or not.
Yeah, so that involves condition assessment and.
Yes, absolutely. That's the time to put the valuation in the condition.
So you APV or someone like that probably too.
Yeah, someone that's got the expertise, I think, is critical. One of the largest asset portfolios with most regional councils is their roads and transport, so I think it's critical. So we're not inflating or getting the depreciation correct from fair value. Some councils don't depreciate earthworks as well. I think that's common practice across the nation, actually. So those things would be reviewed as well, Peter.
Thank you. Any further questions? There being none, I move the report be received. So, thank you. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favour? Thank you. Right, sustainability reports.
Okay, sustainability report is there, and obviously council is committed to identifying savings and efficiencies to support the long-term sustainability of the business and reduce financial impact to the community. As a summary, to date from our stage one. So to give you a bit of a background, council made an extensive list of areas to look at. Stage one involved, I suppose, looking at items which could give us the quickest return on our effort put into it. And as we go through, probably the next stages will take longer and longer because obviously they're probably more in depth and are more involved in changing operations or services related to those. But it's good to, efficiency gains of about $115,000, recurring savings of 462, which is over 2% equivalent to rates, 2.5%, and non-recurring one-off savings of over $500,000. So at this stage, we put that total savings of 1.1, and obviously some of those are recurring, it'll keep going up. So stage 2, as we'll concentrate on community facilities assets with buildings as a priority, and also our tourism, heritage and maritime assets, which we have extensive amount of. Other than that, as you see, there's a schedule built up where we've got targets, and on each council agenda, we've got a special area which is just restricted to sustainability reports.
Thank you. At the bottom of page 251, what's tourism, Vic?
Visitors Information Centre, sorry.
Yeah, we don't have nothing in Victoria.
Well, I presume not, but I just thought I'd ask a question. Any questions or comments?
I mean, this is good work. I mean, it's paying
great.
dividends, isn't it? So
Yeah.
it's very detailed.
And all done under current staff, no
Yeah.
extra resources at this
Yeah.
stage. It's
It's the best way to do it, really.
Okay, I recommend the report be received. I have a seconder. Thank you. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favour? Thank you. Risk management, who's going to present?
I'll just present that. So a report has been prepared, and it's basically looking at the Council Risk Management Policy version 5 and the current framework endorsed by Council in March 2024 and remain current. The framework and new matrix, and therefore all the risk analysis that we do obviously flow from that using the new matrix. We have a risk working group that meets every approximately about a month prior to each audit risk committee meeting, and we're focusing on the definition of services of council to ensure that we haven't got any risks in those, and that's defining the services as well. And the next thing we'll be looking at is going through the different operations. First of all, we've updated the strategic risks, and that now matches and looks at our current strategic plan. And the next step is looking at our different activities and see what risks we have in the activities. Basically, we've been chasing the balls, I suppose, with our risk analysis in that we have something that occurs, and then we run to that and say, oh, we need to do a risk assessment of that, rather than we're trying to move into the area of being more proactive and saying, looking at the operations, is there anything that keeps various supervisors or works people awake at nights because they're worried about something, and looking at those activities. Other than that, the report is written.
Thank you. Any comments, questions?
No.
Okay, thank you. I move the report be received. Thank you for seconding it. There being no further discussion, all those in favour? Thank you. Full cost attribution.
Thank you. Through the chair, this is the report. So previously, I think at the last quarter, quarterly meeting of the Audit Risk Committee, there was a proposed plan of implementing full cost attribution, and now it's matured to the point of being implemented for the drivers for this financial year, and also those drivers are being used to project the costings and the impact for the new budget, and basically flow through all through to the long-term financial plan as well. So specifically, the project is an on-ledger solution, which is will integrate with all our current reporting. I looked at the impact will be every time the journals are run, there'll be about 800 entries raised. They will be done on at least on a monthly basis, and the corporate system has got some fairly good smarts in that it works on like an automatic clearing journal. So you dictate an account that you want clearing or like a journal to be raised against, but it actually doesn't raise against that. You can actually stipulate a contra account where the credit will be raised. So you basically still have in your journal the same expenditure accounts for which I call support services. And then what happens is you'll have a contra account at the end, which basically contras all those expenses out. And then through all the external services, each area, you'll have an expense account for cost attribution. So as with accounting principles, you can't generate income and expenditure. So both those entries are expenditure and expenditure.
So you've still got visibility within each cost centre of the actual costs, and then there are that's
So how we've structured it is that just like depreciation, reports for depreciation go to the accountant as part of the department, and now full cost attribution will go to the accountant as well. So basically, when we push out our departmental reports, they won't see anything different.
Yeah.
But when we report holistically the operation, those will show like basically a net expenditure.
So they only see what they can control.
Yeah, that's right. It's like a peaking depreciation, they worry about they'll look at the bottom line and say, oh, I'm over budget, and it may be because depreciation. So we've taken that away because it's only with FCA. They don't need to. They need to concentrate on things that can help. As I said,
excellent.
So I've probably gone from in page 267 onwards. I've actually specified the drivers that I have settled on for those different areas. And quite a lot of substantial work has been done on that. So number of employees for HR payroll, risk management, single driver for inside employees. If you've got inside employees, they're probably using records management. So it was and also occupancy. If they're internal and they've got a seat somewhere, they get a percentage of the total number of inside employees. Single driver for, and what I've done for CEO's office corporate services audit function, which is us here as the audit committee, and also the external auditors, that's called the audit function. And procurement has been based on the number of transactions which go to those external services. So I think I did an analysis of about 250,000 entries for year to date, this current financial year, to come up with drivers. Customer service, the ladies that we have at the front here, and also other areas that's based on customer service requests to be lodged. For IT, what we've done is we did a weighting. So basically, a dumb terminal is weighted as 1. A mobile phone is weighted as 1.5 units. A laptop is weighted at 2. So then I've got a matrix which shows how many different devices people have, and obviously once again the external services, they are actually pushed out in those bases. Probably most complicated one was the last one I've got there. So basically I looked at the number of transactions on the rate notice. And so we've got Bowhill TV, Bowhill Water, we've got garbage and recycling. We've got landscape entries on there, and we've got general rates. So what I've done is looked at the total amount of those. I put general rates to one side, and I can't remember. General rates in the end relate to about 60%, and 40% of the rest. So then I did obviously 40% of the costs went to those services like garbage collection, etc. And then the 60% I divided up on the by function of each council activity, how much is subsidised by general rates, basically. So, yep, so as a percentage of, if it's, can't remember, I'll just pluck some figures out. So let's say, for instance, our tourism, the Murray, Madam, the committee?
Madam, MMH,
Yeah,
Murray,
Heritage-
Heritage and Maritime.
our tourism, our maritime, if they need $250,000 and out of all those external services, that's 10% of it. They can took 10% of the 60% of rates revenue, rates collection. So quite detailed, but I'm sure that so basically with CMWS, whatever their percentage was, they took that same percentage of transactions, the revenue collection services and rates other. So
I'd be interested to know if the $6,000 that the government gives us for landscape levy covers the full cost attribution.
don't think it does.
Let me know. Definitely before they come to our meeting.
I've got it, yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to know.
So basically, the journals are set up to say, look at this chart of account, whatever balances in that, distribute on a percentage basis for these different drivers. It's got enough smarts to say, oh, well, 50,000, set that chart account, I'll just distribute 50,000 on a percentage basis. Then if next month it becomes 100,000, it says, oh, I already know that I've distributed 50, and I only need to distribute another 50, distributes. And if there's, there's an issue with the postings, let's say that 50,000 should have been there, and we reverse the 50,000, it will redistribute the credit back out as well. So it's pretty good. And I've had it in other councils, so.
Good, thank you. Questions?
Well done.
A lot of work.
And
Through the chair, I just want to acknowledge the work that Clive has done on that. Over the last few months, massive amount of work has gone into that. So, good job, Clive.
Yeah.
So now, so we used to do an exercise off ledger with our grants commission. So now grants commission will be able to be done straight off their ledger as well. So a bit more efficiency there. There is no true guidance as far as in South Australian local government as far as drivers. So just taking on myself to use those drivers. Some of those are suggested in some past papers. There's some arbitrary things could be seen as arbitrary. So the CEO's office at the moment, 40% of their cost goes to governance, which is an external service, and 60% is left for redistribution. Like there's no right or wrong. That could be inverted to be 60-40. I probably over time I'll try and finesse them a little bit further. And the only way to do some of that would be a time and motion study on some of those people.
Very good.
Yeah, excellent. Questions?
No.
Good. There being none, I recommend, I move the report be received. Thank you. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favour? Thank you. Now, the Canberra landfill, do you want me to leave the room or? Good, thank you. Who's going to present this?
I'll do that. I'll do it. Thanks. So, Clive, I've prepared, make a contribution. So the report's there as outlines. We've got a landfill facility that caters for our waste product, also from within the region, but with some regional activities that require disposal. The flood has increased the usage of the facility, and during that process, we redesigned Cell 1, which has generated another 4 to 5 years based on the current intake of around 5,000 tonnes. We did a waste review back in 21, and one of those recommendations was to develop a business case, which we've finalised last year in 2024 on the future direction and operations of the facility. 2 of those recommendations was to progress the development application process for cells 2, 3, 4 and 5, and also to look at the opportunity to take additional waste from regional councils as well. So as part of that, we've undertaken a Cell 2 development project, and we've progressed that. We've had funding for that to undertake. So total project cost is around $2 million. We received 1.1 million in funding to undertake that, and the rest of the project is funded out of allocations from the long-term financial plan that we have brought forward to deliver the project. Noting that it does have 4 to 5 years left in life, it was felt that given the funding opportunity that presented with the LRCIP, it was prudent to bring that project forward so that we could get significant funding towards that. As I said, it's still got 4 to 5 years life, but the project is progressing and should be, or will be, because of the funding requirements, completed by June 30. So the report's objective is just to give you an update on the Cambrai landfill and the Cell 2 development project. Happy to take any questions.
In the minute, Secretary, just note that I did offer to leave the room at the commencement of the discussion on this topic. Right, thank you. Questions?
But then the report from the consultant is very much driven about competition in terms of, competing with other landfills, etc. Was there any opportunity to collaborate and sort of do things differently and, regional subsidiary or whatever it might be with other councils, surrounding councils? Or was that just not feasible, given the size of the...
Yeah, more the size. And the issue is once you go over the 10,000 tonne mark, there's the additional levies that come into play. And so the analysis was that that was the sweet spot. If we could get a few thousand extra tonne from regional councils that don't have facilities, like the Riverland or the Barossa, then we could generate some more revenue through that without going over that 10,000 tonne when the additional levy comes in. And I think there's a methodology, I can't remember what it's called, where we are, how our tonnage is worked out and the costs associated with it. And so, yeah, that was the recommendation from the consultant.
Yeah. And I assume the size of it means there's no opportunity for outsource, or it's just not worth it, I guess, in that respect.
No, correct. Yeah, it's not, well, David's talked about doing some work. The size, 300,000 tonne versus, less than 5,000 at the moment, 6,000. It just wouldn't be economical, but it works for us. And there's also, as I said, some scope to generate some additional revenue. The flood has been good to an extent because of the additional gate fees that we've been receiving. But that's also reduced the life of some of the cells as well.
Yeah. Probably didn't charge enough to the government, did we?
Well, look, yeah, yes, there's definitely consideration there. We could have given the $60-odd million an external company was paid out of the flood. We probably, when our first consideration, Mayor Bailey, was around doing the right thing and supporting the community and the government in dealing with it. We didn't want to commercialise it, but we may have been able to increase the gate fee. Yes.
No, next time.
We're good guys.
So just for interest, I'm just saying I've got the 23-24 way, like total amount going through the front gate for Cambrai at 27,198 tonnes. But that includes the cement, etc. Yeah.
So do we have any provisions, Clive, for future costs? There's a reference in the consultant's report to capping gas management, all those on costs that will happen after the closure of cell 1. So we've taken that out of the current income and
so there's future liability. Yeah, we have future liability, and me and John look forward to it every year to calculating that terrible thing.
I hated that.
Yeah, that's right. So and that's based on like future bond rates, etc. So yeah, quite a complex. So very similar to your future liability of long service leave. We go through the same exercise, but it's not only capping and remediation, but then there's monitoring as well.
Yep.
Quite a long future.
Yeah.
And we're lucky enough now that we don't require any more monitoring on of old sites that we had. That's stopped now. We've got the okay from the EPA.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just in terms of what happens if we carry on with the current, we sort of run out of space in 2040 something or other, 47 something. What happens after then? What happens to the to your waste at that time?
Well, I think, Peter, we've got, I think each cell depends on the tonnage, is between 15 and 18 years. And we've got 4 or 5 years to even get into cell 2. That's obviously a significant amount of time. If my math's right, you know, that's an extra 60 years for us to consider what we need to do. And obviously there'll be a lot significant changes in that time.
Yeah, I guess what I was thinking about is if you get more waste to come in from others, you know, because you want to make money now, what happens at the end? You're going to have to pay something. So there's a decision as to whether you make the life longer, even though you might have a loss, might be cheaper than, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
So I don't know, but a lot of things can change in that time, of course, and probably won't be using waste dumps anymore.
Yeah.
Who knows what the waste industry will look like? But yeah, it's an important point. We've got a balance between making sure we're using our waste versus commercialising it, and the revenue. Will that offset any future costs from the life of the cells?
It's like it was interesting looking at the cost from year to year, and even though we've got we did have some costs covered by Giza, you know, for the flood, but in reality, our own workforce, there was very minimal. It's really only a little bit additional plant usage, and obviously we're using more volume in the space, of the airspace of the landfill, but it all boils down to we've got these fixed costs, you know, like, so if we can't get, me personally, if we can't get anyone else to buy into, you know, giving their rubbish and us taking some money from that, you know, the only alternative is then to look at tuning the workforce at the landfill site itself.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? There being none, I move the report be received. Thank you for doing, going to second it. There's been no further discussion. All those in favour? Thank you. Right. Monthly financial reports to council.
Thank you, David. Through the chair, we've added 2 new sub-reports over the last 12 months. An update on sustainability measures goes to council every meeting, and also an update on properties listed for sale or targeted for sale under section 184. And we're recovering significant amounts of outstanding rates through that project.
Thank you. Questions?
No, we like our reports. Thanks, John. I think the only thing I added, which you may or may not know, is in your little notes section, we see the same stuff each time. The infrastructure report puts new stuff in green. Really great if we could see the new stuff in green, just so that we don't have to keep reading through every little note. Going, remember that from last year? Like, oh, we sold a bus and you know, so just, yeah, infrastructure, do it in green, just so we know which bits to highlight this month. If that's not too hard, we would love that.
I mean, personally, if I were getting this, there's a lot of detail, and I wouldn't be all that much interested in the tiny detail and everything. But I mean, that's for council to decide. But
Yeah, elected members sort of,
they like detail, do they?
we get invoices and everything.
Right. Okay. Yeah. It's always
Begrudgingly, we give it to you, don't we? Because of the 13 questions that come as a result of getting that detail.
Okay.
Well, that's the issue.
So let me know. I move the report be received. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Awareness of council reports. Pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, thank you, David. I've got nothing to add.
We're on the homework.
Message.
Any questions or issues?
No.
Okay, I move the report be received. Seconder, thank you. All those in favour, thank you. 7:14, monitor status of audit minister committee work programme.
Yeah, well, the internal audit review recommendation that was outstanding is a late report.
Yep.
And, work on asset management plans continues, so. And other than that, we're pretty much okay with our work program.
Any comments, Peter? Peter? No? And anybody else? No. I move the report be received. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. And 15. Internal audit, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, just to say, just as a follow-up, so previously, UHY developed, did an independent baseline assessment back in September 2023. Now they've actually came back and revisited those findings of recommendation, and those are actually outlined in the report. And this is building up to as a bigger project, where UHY will develop an internal audit program for the Mid-Murray Council. And just to say that that's stage 1, and this is stage 2 as part of the report. Stage 3 will be developing an assurance map for the council, and that will involve a workshop after the meeting on the 7th of August for this committee. And from that, an internal audit plan will be developed in November.
Okay. In time for our meeting? We have a meeting in November?
Yes, yeah, it'll be the annual financial statements.
So it'll be ready for that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, good.
Wasn't so convincing, was it?
Yeah, I think, yeah, no, I'm pretty sure the time was.
When am I doing?
meeting, so.
All right, any questions? Okay, I move the report be received. Thank you for seconding it. There being discussion, all those in favour? Thank you. Down to other business. I understand there's a retirement in the wings.
That is correct. This will be my last audit committee meeting.
On behalf of the committee, thank you very much for your significant input and making Clive's life better than it would have otherwise been. Thank you for that.
And thank you for the constructive feedback we've received. It's made our job easier to understand.
Easier.
Easier than it would have been.
The guidelines are quite clear.
Excellent.
Crystal clear.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that, but
I do.
yeah, no, they're good. They're good.
So what's the plan in terms of a replacement? Well,
Yeah, so we'll obviously need to
Efficiency
replace
saving.
John, or look, find another job or something. No, no. So yeah, John has been a valuable resource, and I think we work well as a team. We both have our strong points and weak points, and I think we've got to like help each other in those throughout the time. So yeah, so the council will go out for replacement for John, obviously, and hopefully John's been good enough to give us a lot of advance notice, so that will help us, and hopefully, who knows, we might even get us a very small lap over of employees, which is always handy, few and far between in local government normally, especially in finance.
And through the chair, David, just a comment, because in the future there'll be another pending retirement as well, and so what Clive and I have spoken about is succession planning for him as well, as part of any conversation with what we do with John's role as well. So making sure that we've got that really good corporate knowledge over the next 2 years, as progression to future retirements happen as well.
very sensible. All right, any other business, Peter?
Not for me.
Madam Chair, Madam Mayor, sorry, not Chair. Nothing from you?
No, thank you.
Good,
No,
thank you. I have nothing further, and our next meeting is listed, I haven't,
yeah, 7th of August.
7th of August, yes. And thank you very much for those that agreed to change meeting date of this from tomorrow to today, made it very much easy. Well, okay, on that basis, I declare the meeting closed at 3:36 PM. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.